This is episode number 50 of DevOps Paradox with Darren Pope and Victor Farsick. I am Darren.
And I'm Victor.
For this 50th episode, we have a guest. Victor, can you introduce our guest, please?
Yeah, it's Patrick. Now I'm not sure whether I'm gonna pronounce the last name Debois, right? Debois.
Very well.
Like I did my best. And I mean, I guess that almost everybody knows the person. I mean, it's he started the whole DevOps thingy, and everybody should know who you are. So we can skip the introductions, unless you want to say something about yourself.
So just for the record, that was an accident, right? So I had no premeditation of starting DevOps, but a little bit of my background. Yes, for 10 years, I followed the DevOps movement from the very first DevOps days. I've been in IT for many years. And I think what's relevant for this is that I've done so many different roles. I've been a tester, operations manager, developer, all the roles that I could do. Today, I am in a new role, even from January at SNCC, being a developer relations or whatever DevRel means these days. So I've always took different roles and tried to understand what makes them work, what issues they have, and how they work together. And I think hence DevOps is a result of understanding other roles there as well.
It makes my heart happy to hear you say developer relations, whatever that role means. At least that's a consistent answer that I hear from people. I'm not in that role. I'm in a services side, so it's good to hear that other parts of other companies still don't understand what that means. Now, another tagline that I heard, and this is the first time we've spoken before, is that you're the godfather of DevOps. Is that a safe assessment, or have you been given that title by other people?
Yeah, but not in the Italian way, right? So I'm just, as long as it's not that. Yeah, and I think I've been championing the ideas for a long time. That's where, I take some credit in all the energy I put in there, finding new ideas. And, a lot of people, then I got enthusiastic and from there. So I guess that's why they kind of gave me the title, so.
Okay, so if you want more history about Patrick, go Google it. There's going to be plenty to find. But in this crazy Corona world that we live in, and not with lime, so it's a beer joke, and I don't even drink, so it was even worse. But I said it.
It's not a Belgian beer joke.
It's what would be a Belgian beer joke?
I don't think there are any. They're all good.
Oh, okay. Okay, see, again, I try to joke and it just doesn't work. In this crazy world that we're living in at the moment, today we're recording this on March 17th. This is actually St. Patrick's Day. By the time you're hearing this, it's actually April 8th, if you're listening when it releases. This whole global pandemic of COVID-19 has changed how we work. Now, you listened to last week's episode about remote work, but let's talk about how DevOps should work in a remote-first world.
Aha.
Because I'm assuming, Patrick, that's not how you thought about DevOps working, because if we think about people, process, and technology, people have to be together, in theory.
Well, I thought that as well. So a couple of years ago, at the first serverless conf, I was struggling with the same thing. And the reason why, because our company was, where I was working at that time, we were using a lot of cloud services or external services. And, Amazon being one of them and so on. And what was really strange is that we were trusting these other parties as we would have trusted ops before in a company. But they were external to our company. We weren't even talking to people from Amazon, right? and still they're part of a almost like in a supplier role, working together with us. And it wasn't necessary to be with them together. It wasn't even necessary for us to talk to them all the time, to trust them, and to collaborate with them. So that kind of, was a little bit strange for me in a way that did DevOps end by using all cloud services and using things remote, and we don't have to work together anymore. So the cliffhanger, right, is like the communication is just happening differently. I'm just going to give a couple of examples of how I see companies or services or groups, creating trust from remote. Like if you see a website that has a postmortem of a company up, which is public, you kind of learn something about themselves, right? I'm not saying this is as efficient as day-to-day collaboration, but you learn something about the persons behind it. And that's just one example. I'm sure you guys have seen that you kind of trust other groups or other people, even if they're not sitting next to you, like people on the open source.
Absolutely. Open source is a good example, I think. Probably the best example of people working together and not only being remote, but very often not even meeting each other in person ever. And that still somehow works, right?
Well, some people argue that it doesn't work.
Maybe we aren't forced to sit together. So if we don't agree with them, we can go somewhere else.
Yeah, but if you look at kind of what are today's really successful projects, like if you look at Kubernetes, that's extremely successful and that's completely remote. I cannot say that there are not two people sitting next to each other and working on that project, but it is mostly, if not fully remote, and it is very successful. So I wouldn't agree with kind of that doesn't work. We know it does. Now the real question is, does it work for everybody? And all types of companies and all types of people.
But it is another way of having conversations, where that I mentioned maybe the almost like absolute, you put things on the website and so on. But when we had a failure, for example, with Amazon, we had a support contract and we got somebody to talk to us. So, but the goal of the collaboration, I think, within DevOps is not per se that you would have necessarily continuous interactions. If you can have fewer, but they're more meaningful or more exceptions, and everybody builds to that to kind of like let's say the metaphor I sometimes say is that at a party, it isn't the number of interactions that make it a good party. I don't know if you've ever had that at a party. So
well, I don't go to parties, so for me, it's not a big deal. So this is so let's talk about the COVID thing for just a second, and we'll come back to this. I'm part of Gen X. I was born in '66. We were, and there's been a bunch of memes about this, but we were built to outlast this thing because we're used to staying home. We want to stay home, but it's a bad joke. So anyway. But it is about communication. You go to a party, you talk to one or two people, you're all good, right? For me, I'm an introvert anyway. I'm much happier that way.
Yeah, ultimately, it's not really about everybody talking. That's why probably analogy with the party is good. It's not about you talking with every single person you can. It's about finding a person or two or three with whom you can have a meaningful conversation. You're almost always smaller number than all the people you could ever be in contact with. And that's probably how easily applicable to what we do, to software development, that you need to be able to communicate with every person that is relevant to the task that you're performing right now, which can be nobody or 5 people, or hopefully not more than 10.
Yeah. Is that getting close to the Dunbar number?
I think so.
Explain the Dunbar number for people that do not understand Dunbar.
I think if I got that right, it's the number of people you would have typically meaningful conversations with. If the number grows, it is harder to keep up with the network of all the people you kind of work with all the time. So, did I get that right?
Yeah, at least that's my understanding as well.
It's also the number of microservices you can keep in your head, but then you have to do like the square from that. So that's it.
The maximum number of microservices in my head, 1.
Not if you're an operations person.
True. But so what do you think will be, I would like to hear your opinion, kind of, what do you think will be result? How will our industry look like half a year from now? Given that almost everybody is now getting used to remote, will that stick? Will that go away? How will it affect how we do operations or whatever else we do?
Well, for some operations, it's actually not new. For those who do like the 24-hour follow the sun, they're already all remote doing that. I think we already got some hints from working from home, using Slack, doing that. There seems to be this kind of swarming effect that we sometimes do. It's not per se related to it, but in a way, it does create this like, hey, I'm having this problem. All people come around it, and that's not necessarily from remote, but it's the fact that it's virtual that you can do that. That already paved the way for working from remote, I think.
But you touched on now one of the subjects that are becoming more and more painful for me. That's kind of that communication overload that at least I'm experiencing. I had the impression that before I might have actually more productive conversations and less useless conversations than I'm having now. Now I feel like kind of if I don't check all the channels in my company, then I might be missing something, and then I spent hours in that.
Yeah, but I think that's probably not per se related to the being remote or not. I guess that's already happening if you're in the same building. Everybody's shouting at you. Things come in from the internet, from your team lead. He's CCing you on 20 emails. That's the old style. Now it's like add here in Slack, and everybody gets the message. So I think it's much like we had to educate our children about not talking on the phone while sitting at dinner. There's some etiquette that is the communication overload. I'm actually, for me personally, the overload has gone down while working from remote because I tend to be better at dealing with the time I want to work and the time I want to be available in a way. It is helping me being remote. If I would be at the office, everybody would come around all the time. So at least virtual, I can say I'm not available and they can't even come to my place somewhere in the remote Belgium. Nobody will come. So it is helping me in a way.
But what you just said was very interesting to me. You said the time when I'm working and time when I'm available. So what do you mean by that kind of? Is that a time when you're disconnected and do your job and then you're connected to be available with to people or?
Yeah, it's almost like I'm started making slots in my agenda where I'm available for remote meetings and people pinging me, and the rest I'm more in deep focused work and not available all the time. So, but maybe it's also because the whole team I work in is used to working like that. If it's maybe more like a culture of working that way from remote, because we were all in the DevRel group, and there's a lot of people traveling and so on, and we don't need to be in contact all the time for those things. I don't know how it's for you, Victor. Maybe you can explain your situation there.
Oh, mine is special, kind of like I tend to work at nights, and
So you're not available at night for calls.
yes, I tend to do the calls during day and then do the real work during night because I found everything is quieter and nobody is really. It's easier to concentrate for me at night. I don't know. I'm kind of like I'm increasingly removing myself from more and more communication channels, and in hopes that I will remain in those that really matter in a way. Because there is company Slack and then Kubernetes Slack and then I don't know 17 other Slack channels that I felt in the past that are important, and now I'm feeling that actually it was a mistake on my part to participate in so many groups, let's say.
But did that change because of now working more remote? You were already.
No. So no. I was remote for many years now. So in that sense, the only thing that changed now with the current situation is that I'm not visiting other companies. But work is work when it's not with other companies. It was, in my case, it's always remote. It's more that I think that the number of people communicating remotely is increasing, and then I need to start filtering more and more.
Oh, I see. So you're getting more requests for meetings then, or like remote meetings? Because
not that much remote meetings. It's more like kind of. I mean, there are remote meetings, but it's more like 17 different Slack workspaces open, and then somebody's bound to mention your name in each of them at any given moment.
Yeah. Maybe it's because they now have more time, so they work more efficient.
Oh yeah. I'm sure. Actually, I do believe that for many people right now, they are less efficient because for many people it gets a bit of time until you get used to working from home and remote. And it's not only you getting used to as a person, but all your colleagues being somehow on the same page of what that means. So I would be guessing, and I'm not really purely guessing, that for many people, these first few weeks of remote work are challenging. And after that, I think that people are going to start saying there is no turning back. I'm not going back to the office no matter the situation with the virus.
Mm-hmm. I do think it's a balance, right? So
yeah,
I used to run support for live TV shows, and we did that all from remote. So like even if it was a show in another country, we're all on Slack. Everything was remote. Even the sales only remote. We hardly visit any other country, and it's doable. But when things really matter, there is a little bit more efficiency when you're all together in the room, because you can just shout out, or if you're busy with something or really focused as a team, it works. But if you don't need that all the time, then it's fine to kind of work a little bit more remote at your own time, at your own pace. I think conversation has been changing for a while. Like I'm not saying GitOps as such, but the conversation has moved on those platforms. A little bit less need to be there in person, so other people can watch the conversation. It isn't. I was at the meeting and everything was decided, and we weren't there, so you don't know what happened. That is though, part of a new cultural thing. Like nobody writes notes anymore of meetings or prepares meetings, but that's another thing. You talk about being old. I remember those meetings that you do needed to prepare. But a lot of the conversation is volatile. Like I think you are seeing as well. Do something here, do something there, and that's going to be a hard challenge also from working remote. A little bit of rigor of tying this always back to what was discussed. If others weren't there in the Slack conversation, wasn't on the call, to keep that back. I have good experiences while working remote when I was at Atlassian, but that only worked because everybody was remote. If you're the only one remote and the others are at the office, I usually find it like way harder to get a link or a connection to the people, because you're not in their focus. You're somewhere there, but you're not on top of their mind because they're at the coffee machine or something else.
Yeah, to me that's the worst situation. I was in such a situation a couple of times, and I reject ever being in such a situation again, because I had no idea what's going on when I was remote and most of the people in the office. That should be legal. That should be banned as an option even, I believe.
Victor said so.
I mean, either almost everybody remote, or nobody. That's my takeaway. That will probably change with time, because on the other hand, I have the impression that even people that are all in an office are communicating more and more remote. Kind of like you're sitting next to a colleague and he's still sending you Slack messages. So probably over time, it will literally, there will probably be almost no distinction between remote and in an office.
It's interesting how also, coming back maybe to the open source, the pull request, the discussions online, that was first invented from remote, and then it came into the enterprise, it seems, somehow, like this same asynchronous. Maybe that's what's gonna change. Asynchronous working way more, because I can work at my own time. When I'm remote, I might not be available. So that flexibility might be another aspect of that we kind of use more when we're working from remote somehow.
Yeah, I mean, asynchronous is interesting because at least I had once or twice a situation that I need to have a conversation with people and tell them, okay, look, you cannot expect me to answer immediately on Slack or whatever we're using. I will answer when I'm available to answer. If you need something, you need to call me. If you expect immediate answer, call me. Otherwise, this is asynchronous. You post a message and reply might come immediately or next day. We don't know.
Maybe coming back to the original question, does it change DevOps?
Oh yeah, I forgot what we talked about.
That's no different than normal. It's fine.
Yeah. So I think the collaboration can still happen. I have a hard time figuring out why it shouldn't, but I understand it's almost like this podcast. There's a paradox. We've been advocating sit more and more and more together and work together, and then now we can't do anymore. But I think the collaboration can still be going. I think it'd be harder to foster the initial almost like bond, and if you don't communicate often enough, it might like lose it a little bit. But I think that's no different from being in an office and not seeing somebody for a long time.
But I think that what is missing probably to make it fully efficient is maybe that periodical, once in a year or whatever the period is, face to face. In that sense, I think it's similar to an office, right? A boss might have his own office and he's going to communicate with you by phone, by email, by Slack, whatever he is. But then comes the time of real bonding, which is when we all get to the kitchen and just not necessarily even talk about work, but just get to know each other. Kind of. Maybe I'm still old-fashioned, but I still believe that kind of once we meet face to face, then all the communication that is not face-to-face anymore is so much more fluid somehow.
Yeah, we started having virtual coffee hours, and that's just getting on a Zoom with people who happen to be there. And I've seen way more people right now than I would have done before. Because now I get to, they just show up. And I wasn't in the main office, but now they're all working remote and I see them. So it is changing. I think many of the conferences, also around open source or DevOps or people who are like community, there is quite often almost like, and we finally get together during this conference. We don't care too much about the content, but the fact that we are all seeing each other is way more valuable than the conference content.
No, I love what you just said because I felt weird so far because I've been the only person I know that is saying that content of the conference is not the main reason to go to a conference. So it sounds great to hear and somebody else saying saying something similar.
Because that can record it. We're now working on this virtual conference, and it's almost like this psychology barrier that a speaker cannot be recorded ahead of time. And basically, it's doing the same. Like nobody will interrupt the speaker while watching, so it could have been recorded. But the fact that you can have the discussion and talk to the people, that's the valuable part. It's always for me the hallway track, almost like why I go to a conference, because the talks are recorded anyway most of the times.
Yeah, there is a downside, at least in my case, that I tend to postpone watching recordings because there is always something else to do. And when I'm physically present, I'm almost forced to attend that talk.
True, like a focus,
Yeah, like that's why I'm there. Kind of like I'm there to attend a talk or talks, right? When it's recorded, then yes, when I look at it, there is no real difference between me watching recorded session and being on a conference, except that it's very likely that I will postpone it, maybe even indefinitely, because, there are other things that look like they're more important or urgent.
So imagine a conference that would apply I think it's Snapchat, right? Where the content will be removed within a day.
Yes.
So it's like forcing you to have to watch it. If not, it's bad luck.
Yeah, actually, I would go with that. Kind of maybe even not after a day. Kind of, it's live and it's happening now, and it's after the session is finished, it's gone.
Yeah, but I think the downside for many, and that's the same for you, is like, how do sponsors then get to interact, right, at these conferences? That's
true.
That's going to be totally weird.
True.
Drop by or virtual chat, like. No. Well, maybe if it would be you, Victor, on a chat, there would be a lot of people coming.
Well, I actually received an invite or something on LinkedIn the other day, and it was from a vendor that's like, since I don't remember what event it was, like, hey, we're still going to try our best to talk with everybody that was going to be there. So there's people already sort of playing that game. I don't know how effective it will be, but it might actually be better than walking through the show floor. You might actually get better engagement with people.
Yeah, you actually get that focus time with the customer, right? So he has set some time away, and it's not the casual, like you run by a booth, you want to have a t-shirt. No, not that style, but, at least they're more qualified as leads, maybe.
And also, I wonder, since this year most of the conferences will be online or canceled, I wonder, maybe organizers will realize that actually pouring hundreds of thousands or millions of dollars into conference is not really that worth it anymore. If you might be able to get similar results online.
Well, let me talk about one thing that I saw this morning. And again, we're recording this on March 17th. In the United States, now you can argue this point, but professional wrestling is a big deal. WWE has canceled the live WrestleMania that was going to happen at the big stadium. 65,000 people, right? Event gone. They're taking the whole thing into a television studio with no attendees. If a freaking professional wrestler can work in a completely empty studio and get hundreds of thousands of people to potentially watch, as a tech person, we should be able to at least get a few hundred people to watch.
Yeah, I think so. Yeah. But I have a background in my previous company about doing the TV shows, and it's all about making it a show, right? If it's just present, next one present, that's boring, right? It's informational, but if you compare that to some of the Twitch live streams, for fundraising or stuff like that, they make a good show. There's humor, there's a variation, they do some stuff, and that's kind of a new field for it. Video production was already kind of hard for a lot of the conference to deal with because it's quite technical and so on. But then making it like an entertainment value or like a show value, that would require like a producer almost. And, conferences are not used to that. I still get conference that said, send in your slides 2 weeks ahead of time because we want to make sure, they're well projected or something. So that will change. Definitely that field will change.
Yeah. Well, and I come from the live event space. Mm-hmm. So to me, I toured for 5 or 6 years. I think it was right at 6 years. So to me, it's all about the show. It's all about the entertainment value. And I don't think most conference organizers even think that way. I don't know that they know how to think that way. They're just used to like, here's a session, here's a track, here's the next slide, blah, 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 next thing, versus a single thread. I think this is where single track conferences probably are going to become more the norm, or it may not be single track, but under an umbrella, there's very much single tracks, and having a true producer for each track is a big deal. Maybe we can do that on the side in all our spare time, right?
Yeah. Let's do that. Actually, I was talking to somebody who did like part of a NBA production, and they said they were going to repurpose also existing footage, but they were going to put live commentary on it. So that again, even though the talk would have been recorded, imagine there was like us pausing it and then say, what this guy really said. Like that was a load of crap. Like, do you believe that? And then you continue with the speaker. That's just one different format again. So
right, or sort of like Mystery Science Theater 3000, where you have the 3 little talking heads talking. I mean, it's like somebody could produce a conference. Maybe that's the next thing to do is people produce the conference in their standard way, and then we have commentators after the fact tearing the conference apart. That would probably not be a good thing, but
I want to do that. I want to do that. Let's find talks and comment on them.
So join AllTheTalks.online. No, totally. So I'm trying to do that with that conference, and I have some ideas, but conference technology, it's still struggling sometimes, and definitely like a production is nice if it's happening from one location, and now all of a sudden we have the challenge like this podcast that everybody's working from remote, production is remote, and so it takes quite some preparation, but it's almost like the Muppets, right? Like the 2 guys in the balcony commenting.
Statler and Waldorf.
Yeah.
Thank you. You must be a kid of the 70s.
Yeah, totally.
Oh, this is good. I knew I liked you. Now you just went up another 10 notches.
Okay. Thanks for that, Darren.
Well, it's okay. Animal's my favorite, so that's another
Totally.
conversation.
Since we'll be closing soon, can you give a pitch for all the talks online? Because it's extremely interesting, and I think that people deserve to hear.
So all the talks online is something that started because all of us couldn't travel. And I just said, like, what about all these speakers? Can we get them together who can't go to conferences? And then I launched the idea on Twitter, got 50 submissions. Then I tossed that inside our company, Sneak, and they said, okay, run for it. It's a completely community-run event. 5 tracks. We have Java, Node.js, frontend, security, DevSec and Ops, and Cloud Native. It's going to be 24 hours, and we're going to raise money for charity for the COVID virus. So, doing our work and raising money, I don't think it gets better than that. And we really hope to also experiment with the format and get it like somewhere as a show. I can't say we're going to hit it, but we'll definitely try. So
it's an experiment, right?
Yeah, totally.
When is this event happening?
So that is a very good question. Let me Google that for you. It is the 15th of April.
So you're listening to this at the right time.
And it will be for 23.999 hours.
Okay. Why? What's that? Are you just building in latency? Is that what it is?
Because.
Just because. Okay. You got now. How many nines was it? Wait. How many
3
nines do you
nines.
have?
That's
Three
not
nines.
really
Oh,
serious.
that's not good enough. You need 5 nines. You need 5 nines.
Well, we said it was an experiment, so
Oh, okay. 3 nines.
setting
Okay,
expectations right.
Okay, three nines are fine for an experiment. So April 15th, we'll include links down in the show notes for that. We can follow you. You'll send some information to me, and we'll get all your. Of course, if I was to go and Google you, that sounds really nasty. Go ahead and find your information and I'll put it in there. But if you could send me the information you want posted, I'll put it on the show notes.
Yeah, I think I mostly while working, while not working, I am on Twitter, Patrick Debois, and you'll see things passing by, unorganized, but you can just follow my train of thought there.
So hop on Patrick's train at Twitter. Victor, do you have anything else?
No, it's this is just reminding me that I didn't submit the talk yet.
Dude. You got less than 7 days. Well, if you're listening, right? You got more than that. But
Yeah.
all right, well, let me close it up here, so semi-close, normal close, and then we'll do the real close. If you're listening via Apple Podcasts, please subscribe and leave a rating and review. All of our contact information, including Twitter and LinkedIn, can be found at devopsparadox.com/contact. And if you would like to be notified by email when a new episode is released, you can sign up at devopsparadox.com. The link, or actually the sign-up form, is at the top of every page. Now, actually, before I get to the now, I'll keep going here. There are links to the Slack workspace, the Voxer account, and how to leave a review in the description of the episode. Now, here's the now. We've also started live streaming. By the time you're listening to this, we've had a couple of live streams already. If you're wanting to watch the chaos that is not normal, that you're listening to in your ears, and you want to see chaos, some of the episodes may that are live stream turn into normal podcast episodes. Others may just be bonuses. And the only place you're going to find out about them is if you go to the YouTube, go out to YouTube and search for DevOps Paradox. We don't have a direct link for that yet, so just go search for it. Go ahead and subscribe, ring the bell, do all the things. Also, last point, if you would like to support us, we've set up a Patreon. We've got a link to it below. We want to try to make some things better. One of the things is try to get me out of doing all the transcripts, and maybe I can outsource that to somebody else, and a Patreon would help nudge that a little bit more. So that's all the asks right now. More importantly, AllTheTalks.online.
AllTheTalks.online.
AllTheTalks.online. There we go. If we said that before, I apologize if I missed it. So AllTheTalks.online. AllTheTalks.online, happening next Wednesday, if you're listening to this on April 8th. So it's happening on April 15th. It's 23.999 hours. So if you're already locked in the house, maybe that's a great day to take the day off. How are you guys? Is it just going to be streamed on that site? Is that the plan?
Yeah, we're still figuring out the platform, so we have some time.
I can help you with that. I can help you.
Okay.
I have answers.
That's good.
The answer is not, by the way, close your ears, my friends. The answer is not Zoom or GoToWebinar.
No.
Or the other platforms. We can agree with that. At least
Yeah,
that point.
totally.
It's been interesting watching channels of people that I watch. It's like yesterday being March 16th when we're recording, Zoom was down quite a bit. GoToWebinar and GoToMeeting was down quite a bit. So they're feeling this great influx of remote. My concern with what Victor brought up is like, okay, this is going to become normal. But the problem is people are starting to potentially have bad experiences with remote because the remote tools are falling apart. In fact, I saw a joke today. It's like, it's one thing when you watch 8 people hanging out in a hangout and they're talking over each other. He says, I'm watching my 8-year-old kid do this with a group of 20 of them in a hangout right now. He says, that's a whole nother level of craziness.
So the real issue, at least that I have, is not that I'm working remote. I'm used to it. The real issue is that my whole family is locked with me in a house. So my issue is
that Victor.
My issue is that they are not remote. That's the problem.
No, well, and that's the key. And I've talked to some of our coworkers about that right now. It's like, okay, we've been used to working remote, right? That's normal. But Now, I'm a little bit different because I'm an empty nester. It's just me and my wife, so we're used to this part of it. But a lot of people have been used to sending their kids off to school, off to daycare, and they've had the house primarily to themselves, and now the house is full. It's a different way of working. And maybe you said that wrong, Victor. They're actually having to deal with you being at home.
I was here first. They were in school and they're in the office.
I love you, Victor. It's just one of those things. Okay. Patrick, thanks for hanging out with us today.
It was really fun. Thanks for having me.
And to you listening, thanks again for listening to episode number 50 of DevOps Paradox.